Carley Musser is on staff with us as a mental performance coach inside Fearless Warriors. She went to WVU, where she studied sport and exercise psychology, and then went on to attain her master's in sport, exercise, and performance psychology from Barry University. She has her own practice, CM Mental Performance, and is located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Aside from sport and performance psychology, she is super passionate about running and fitness. You can usually find her at the beach or hanging with her friends and family. Her faith is important to her as well, and I have been so fortunate to be friends with Carley for almost 3 years. If you are a member of our programs, hopefully Carley's name is familiar, and we've also aired her parent workshop right here on the podcast as well. So if you want to go back, we can link that in the show notes as well. But today I'm so excited because we get to have an authentic conversation. You get to listen in on some of Carley and I's amazing phone calls that we've had over the years. And she gets to update us on some of the projects she's been working on and the team she gets to work with. So with that, I have Carley with me live. Carley, welcome to the pod.
Hi. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I'm kind of tearing up over here. You're just the sweetest. And I'm so grateful. I can't believe it's been 3 years since we connected. And I'm just so grateful to be here. I love our authentic conversations on a regular basis. So it's just kind of cool to do it live and recorded. So thanks for having me.
I think it's going to be so surreal and it's going to happen. We always say this, it's going to happen. We have not met in person. So all the FaceTimes, all the phone calls, all the Zooms, it'll just be a natural thing, right? Like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's wild to me that we've never met in person, but it does. It feels like you said, it's just natural and normal. And so yeah, it'll be awesome when we get to give each other a big hug and and
I love
actually
it.
say yes,
So,
absolutely.
Carley, we kind of want our listeners to, I mean, I know all these things, but can you help our listeners, the Fearless fam, give them your update? Where are you at? What are you doing? Obviously, you have your own practice. You're doing coaching for us, but give us a high level view. Where are you at?
Yeah. So it's really crazy to look back. I always talk about reflecting and how important I feel like reflection is. I'm someone that I journal, I try to do it every day. Honestly, since college, I think that it's a great way to reflect and just gain self-awareness. You'd think that we know all the thoughts that we have every single day, every minute, but we don't. So I would say, next month is going to mark 4 years since I got my LLC and took the jump. And while this was during COVID, again, like you mentioned in the beginning, with my faith being so important to me, I just felt like God was telling me to do it, right? When the world would say no, God was like, no, like, let's go, let's do it. So, I got my LLC. And for me, a big thing for me was to know, or for others to know, that I didn't want to just work with sports or athletics, right? So that's why I kind of made it CM Mental Performance. My brother, who is a very successful business owner of several businesses now, I kind of sat and thought with him, and he even helped me design my logo. He's great at that. And I was like, I want this to be known in my name, that I don't just work with athletes. So it's crazy that I'm almost at the 4 year mark. It's just, all glory to God. But I feel like right now, in the last few years, I started running marathons. So I have an extensive running background. And so I just did my fifth one in April. And so, like I've mentioned with Amanda, this marathon mindset has really, been on my heart, just this term in the last 6 months even. And it's not just about running, or if you're a marathoner, but it's the idea of, life is a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? Progress doesn't happen overnight. Results don't happen overnight. So I think just really being able to shift that into my clientele and working with athletes has been awesome. I started working with the SWAT team a few months back. So police department and then the SWAT team, which we've really been pushing that. And it's been awesome to be able to, work with a master corporal and then teach the skills that I have and then, he's like, well, how do we incorporate this? So, one day my thoughts are rolling and I type up an email and then he puts it in his terms. And I'm like, this is awesome. Right. And if you know me or if you've ever worked with me, breathing is something that I live, preach by. Right. So I think that if we can't be present and we can't control our breath, then how are we going to deal with X, Y, and Z? How are we going to deal with all the other things? So that's been an exciting thing. I've worked with nurse managers at a local hospital here in Lancaster, and just being able to, you know, try and understand. I don't personally understand because I'm not a nurse or a nurse manager, but just try and understand what they go through on a daily basis, and just how they talk with family. Like one of them is, works with, she's the manager of the ICU, right? The things that she sees on a daily basis and loss of loved ones. And then, almost being a therapist to family members of that loved one. It's just, I mean, she's like so superwoman. It's just really admirable. And so cool to see how mental performance can truthfully make an impact on, no matter if you're a human being, it can make an impact on your life. So yeah, it's kind of where I'm at.
But that speaks to the essence. This does not surprise me, right? So your practice has evolved over the past 4 years. It doesn't surprise me because one of the things that you preach and practice, like you don't just preach it, you practice it, is that we are more than just what we do, right? Like you're a human first. And I've heard you say that it's in your bio. You speak it, you live it. And so what a cool way of, oh, look at who I have gotten to work with. And I had no idea about the nurse managers. You think about some of those situations. It's when we strike out, and I'm speaking to the softball families that are listening to this, I think it gives you perspective because here I have parents that are coming to me and saying, my daughter's striking out and it feels like it's life or death. They're sitting on the edge of the bleachers wondering, oh my gosh, is my daughter going to succeed? Is she going to fail? How's she going to handle failure? And the perspective and the juxtaposition of you're working with adults that have somebody's life on the table or the
Yeah.
SWAT team, right? Like these
Mhm.
are life and death situations. And I guess the point that I'm trying to point out is that I think sometimes when we zoom out in multiple ways, when you're equipping your daughter with these skills or your son or whoever with these mental performance skills, it is not just for sports.
Yep.
And I think that's
Absolutely.
the brevity of what we do, that like it is so much bigger than sports. It
Oh,
is so much bigger than performing better on the field. It's about, can you cope when things get hard? How do you focus when you need to be at your best, when somebody's life is in your hands? And maybe your daughters won't grow up to be surgeons and nurses and SWAT team members, but
yeah.
still, even today, like what are some of the skills that you as a mental performance coach, I know you talk about breathing, what are some of the skills that you're embodying every day?
Yeah. So I think a big thing is just trying to be present. Mindfulness is something I've always been so like working, like in college, I was working hard to like thought I want to get my PhD, right? So I'm like working hard to, get to my next goal. And then during grad school, it was when honestly, trying to work with a team that just wasn't how do I want to word this? Just, kind of was like whatever, things fell through. And then I started working with a team that was like an hour away. And being around, Miami, traffic was just nuts. And the director, he just was a little, unorganized and all over the place. And I don't mean that in a rude way. It's just kind of how it was. And I was just so like, oh my gosh, I have to know, I have to know. And then I just kind of was like, you know what? Like, I need to adapt and adjust a little more. I need to, practice mindfulness. And so that's kind of like now fast forward today, like when I start to get too far ahead, then I have to remind myself, okay, like be present and, be in the, moment. And also I think same thing with progress. Whenever I start to, or comparison, right? I start to try to remind myself, or honestly, I look in the mirror, and I just did this the other week. I forget like why. And I was like, Carley, like, you are strong, you are determined, or all the things that are facts, right? That, it doesn't mean that those aren't areas that I still need to continue to grow in. But I think, practicing believing in yourself, trusting yourself, and knowing that you've got this the way that you trust a teammate or a friend or a parent, I think is key. So I think, some of the biggest things for me is or are, just being authentic and trying not to compare myself to anyone else. I think that this is something that from a young age, I've really struggled with when I look back. And I think so many young females do. There are so many talented, and not to say, even if men are listening right now, not to say that you don't either, but women tend to be we're more emotional, just how God made us. And so we tend to compare more, where guys are kind of like, oh, you can do that. Well, I can do that. They might not get in their heads as much when it comes to that. So I think that one of the biggest things that I'm seeing with females, especially middle school through high school, is comparison. And I think so much of that social media is such a big role, and just body image. And it just breaks my heart because I went through it. And I think so many young females do.
Absolutely. I think you know this, and I love analogies. So one of the analogies that I've been hitting really hard that seems to be resonating with parents and players is this idea that we're on this roller coaster. And if your confidence is placed in things that go up and down, then you're going to be on this confidence roller coaster. Your confidence is going to come and go. And I have to preface this with, your confidence will come and go. But the more that we can level out these big highs and these big lows, if your confidence is placed in things that fluctuate, like your performance, if you're riding the high and you're super confident and you're 3 for 3, and you attach your confidence to performing well at the plate or hitting in the game winning, run, then your confidence is going to be really, really high. And so if that's true, then the opposite is also going to be true. So you're telling me that when you go 0 for 3, then your confidence is going to be really, really low. That's a huge roller coaster up and down. And so I love that you talked about placing, comparison on other people. If you're placing your confidence in other people, well, let's talk about body image, right? Like, there's always going to be somebody skinnier than you. There's always going to be somebody stronger than you. There's always going to be somebody that can pitch faster than you. And so if you're riding this roller coaster of comparison too, there's always going to be highs and lows in that. And so I love that you said trust in yourself, because that's how we get off the roller coaster. Is this is me. Do I trust myself and my abilities? And have I journaled? And have I done my mindfulness? And have I done my breath work? And if that's the only thing I can control, you're not waiting on somebody else to operate this roller coaster. This is your life, right? Like, you get to decide. And so I think you're right. So let me ask you this, Carley. With the clients that you've worked with, what are some of the tactile, like, like the skills, when you get down to the core of it, if you have somebody that's struggling with comparison, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah. Good question. I think in a way I always tend to, well, I think whenever I'm working with anyone, like, of course, if it's a team and there's 50 people, it takes time to get to know someone. But I think from the get-go, I'm so big on building trust and rapport and getting to know my person, like getting to know the human being in front of me. I think a big thing for me is kind of like asking them, like, what's important to you? Do you remember a time when you didn't compare? Do you remember a time, and then just kind of getting them to think about, again, this is going to be more challenging at the youth level, right? Sometimes, or, even sometimes middle school, but especially if they're high school, getting them to think, okay, if you were 90 years old and you are sitting in your rocking chair and you looked back over your life, would you have wanted to live your life, or would you have wanted to live your life through the lens of someone else? I think that is so powerful, and that's something that I circle back with. I think I relate to that so much too, because my grandparents, who I was super close with, um, they passed. Nan actually passed away a few years ago, but today's her birthday, so her heavenly birthday. Yeah. So
Okay,
which is,
can we just pause for a second?
yeah.
Because I know how important your nan was to you. And like we picked this date randomly of like, we need to get on a pod. We need to get on a pod. So let's just call that a little God wink because
Oh,
happy birthday, Nan.
yes.
This is awesome. Like you get to glorify her and
Oh,
her legacy. Like,
oh,
how cool is that? How cool is
oh,
that?
oh, yeah. I love, and just to throw in there a little, Nan, one of the things she always said was never let anybody make a fool out of you. So I like love that, which I think you could tie into so much, just being authentic and being you and being yourself. But yeah, thanks for shout out to Nan. Yeah,
So
I mean,
when she would say that, what context would she say that in?
oh, she would say this in terms of friends. She would say this in terms of, relationships, or, if I was going through a breakup, she would say this in honestly just everything. But I always carried it through with me, just like my pap, like so much. He was so wise and full of so much wisdom, and so there are a few things that both of them would say on a regular basis that I've just carried through with me. But I think we can relate to it so much, especially in today's world, especially as women, right? Whether it's women in sports, whether it is women in, like becoming CEOs, whether it's women, all across the board, right? Like remembering your worth and not letting anyone make a fool out of you. And if someone is going to, that's not inside your control at all, right? Like it's inside of your control to believe in yourself and walk away, or to turn your cheek, right? So I think it's really cool to see it from a different perspective years back versus now, and just how I'm able to carry that through with me. But I think now more than ever, it's a time to really tap into who you are. And I think too that if you don't focus on your lane, you never know who you could impact, because I truly believe that God has given us all different gifts. And if you're trying to walk in someone else's lane and be like someone else, well, guess what? You're going to miss your chance to impact everybody around you. So I think that is just one of the most, honestly, like important things in life, because we don't get time back. So for any young female that's listening, picture yourself at 90 and you're old and wrinkly and you're looking back over your life. Like, what kind of life do you want to live? Do you want to live your legacy, or do you want to live someone else's?
That is so good. I'm already thinking about this. So, one of the things that came up for me in that is I think this has been a hot topic recently on other podcasts I've been on, and we're going with this and trusting our gut in this conversation of whoever needs to hear this message. I think sometimes we shrink who we are, and so like you said, everyone has these God-given talents and what makes us us, and I think sometimes our society puts a greater emphasis on people who are more confident, people who are more extroverted. And one of the things that I've started to realize too is that I'm very self-aware that I am the type of person that wants to fix problems and solve problems. And so I'm really aware of I am getting better at it. I'm getting better at being quiet and holding space for people's experiences and not immediately trying to solve things, right? Because as a mental performance coach, we want to give them the answers. And what I've started to notice is a lot of my clients have the answer. And so I love this beautiful analogy of when you're 90 and you're sitting in your rocker. One of the other things that we do is I'll say, okay, great. The you of today, if we were on a mental performance call, I would say, hey, Carley, can you rewind 4 years ago before you started your practice? What would you tell that Carley? Right? And like you have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Hindsight is beautiful. Or even, hey, Carley, what would you tell Carley 3 months ago?
Yeah.
And they have
100%.
all this wisdom that only they can live, that only they know.
Yeah. I love that. And that's so great. And it's so cool to think And every year I've tried to write down at the end of the year, okay, what did I learn as a professional, as a business owner, as a human in this year? And it's so cool because some of the things that I put up with year one, I would not put up with now. Respectfully, right? It's just, and I think with age, we become more wise and whatnot. But I love that. And I think that it is so cool. I always have this image in my head, and I don't really know if it was like legit or if I just have this image in my head, but there's like this image of me. I'm in like maybe fourth or fifth grade, and I look up into the sky, and I can literally picture this, Amanda, like it's like night out, and I look up into the sky, and I'm like looking at the stars, and I'm like, what kind of life do I want to live? Like, who do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to marry? What kind of life do I want to live? What do I like, want it to look like? And I just come back to that a lot. So when you were talking about 4 years ago, or, I pictured that Carley, just looking up the sky and thinking like, the sky is my limit. And it's just so cool to see, because almost any time that I've ever settled in life, whether it be just everything, I feel like God hasn't allowed me to, which I don't know why, but I'm so grateful. And so I think that, we can really whether it's, there are people that I have conversations with, and it might not even be them, it might be their spouse, that are in, a job that they're so hardworking and their boss is just such a micromanager or a control freak, right? And it's just like, wow, like I feel so sad for them that they've, gone through that. And I'm like, I don't want to live that type of life, right? So I think at the end of the day, just really listening, if you're, if you are someone that, maybe faith isn't your thing, like just listen. We all have that inner voice, um, and just really listening to that. I think it's really, really going to guide you. But I just never want people to be limited or believe the lies, that you're not worthy or not enough, or that you can't do something that you want to do.
Well, even think back, and this is where this is taking me back to our friendship, is even think back 2 years ago. One of the things that vividly stands out to me is we would hop on, was it every other Friday? Or was it every other? I feel like, or every Friday.
It might have been every Friday and then every other Friday, I feel,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
So there was a season of our lives where we were having some really like deep conversations where both of us were kind of struggling in our practices.
Yeah.
And, I think about 2 years ago and how far my business has come in 2 years of the conversation of, well, more specifically, I think one of the projects you and I have worked on is how do we build out a one-on-one package? And you and I have both taken clients in tandem and trying to build my practice and help other mental performance coaches fill their client list. And so we had kind of worked on some projects together, but I'm sitting in my office, but 2 years ago, like this office didn't even exist. Like I was pregnant with my third child. We had just purchased the house and life was in tandem. Like everything felt rocky. And I think about our friendship and the conversations that we had. A lot of our conversations had nothing to do with business and everything to do with life and faith of like, man, is there a light at the end of this tunnel? Like you and I have had some like really tough conversations where like we've cried on calls and um I think what's really beautiful about this is that you and I are able to be vulnerable and share our stories because I think sometimes people assume. I was just on a call the other day with a mental performance coach that I'd connected with. From the outside looking in, I'm sure you've had this too, where your friends and your family say, "Oh my gosh, Carley, like, look at your practice." And from the outside, you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool. You got to work with the SWAT team and, like my semi-pro football team." And people see these and these little blips of highlight reels of our lives, and they just assume that we have everything figured out.
Oh, well, I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm smiling because, it's so true. And like, I'll run into people from high school that I haven't, seen in years, and they're like, oh, like, it's so cool. And I am the first to tell them, hey, I really appreciate you. Like, that's so sweet. But I just want you to know it's not all rainbows and sunshine. Like, I'm the first, because I want it to be known that, like, the realness of it, the rawness of it. And I think that's the one thing with social media, that me being someone that's so old school, I really want to be authentic. I really want, I don't want this constant highlight reel of things. And I think we never know what someone else is walking through in life. And I think that's why it's always so important to be kind and to be caring. Um, but even, myself, for example, which, and I don't know if we were going to dive into this later, but just while we're on the topic of it, with marathons and everything that I mentioned earlier, I haven't, like, friends and family know, and I haven't publicly, said anything about it. But even with running and posting more running content or on my story, and people would be like, that's awesome, or, connecting with people through that, I haven't been, because I have a stress fracture in my femur, and I found that out mid or after my last marathon, like the second week in May. And just like you were talking about earlier, the light at the end of the tunnel, I resonate with that so much, because I feel like this week is the first that I really am starting to feel that, right? Going from being a month non-weight bearing, and then slowly being able to kind of come back to it, this week being on one crutch. I think, it's so easy to feel great and to feel confident when life is going great. But we have to remember to still have that confidence is still inside of us, that we're still worthy, no matter how great we are, or if we retire and wrap things up. So I think, honestly, I feel terrible because I don't even remember what question you asked, but I'm just rolling with it. I think that in seasons like this, just like you and I, when we would hop on these calls and be in different seasons, just like when you were talking about you didn't have this office yet and you were pregnant with your third, I had total chills. I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember that. But we have different seasons in life, and we can either embrace the hard seasons, the seasons that make us more resilient, or we can just choose to say, well, like, poor me, and feel sorry for ourselves, right? And I think that embracing this season, knowing, hey, you know what, I'm going to be able to relate to my athletes even more, or performers, or just other people who have gone through tough things. And like you were talking earlier about perspective, one of the biggest things since day one, when I bawled my eyes out and found out that I had to go on crutches and everything, because if you know me, I'm a go person, even aside from marathons. And I was like, you know what, I still have two legs. And I happened to see someone in a wheelchair. We were actually at, like, the beach, and my mom, it was like a car show. My dad and my brother love cars, and I do too. But after 5 minutes, I'm like, all right, that's cool, I've seen it.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. And I'll never forget this. My mom was wheeling me over to, like, a Sheets, or this was in Delaware, so Wawa. And I saw this guy outside, and he was, middle aged, and he didn't have two legs. He had, like, little stubs, and I'm just like, God love him. And I go in the bathroom, and I just was like, man, like, and I come back out, my mom wheels me back out, and he's like, hi, I gotta say hi to my, like, wheelchair friend. Like, so sweet, so nice. His name was Jerry. And I just was like, Carly, like, things could be so much worse right now. And I think we have to meet ourselves where we're at. And it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to think, hey, like, this is such a complete 180. And that first week was the hardest for sure. But I think always having, like you were talking about it earlier, always having a different perspective, I think, is key. And when we're able to have that perspective, I think we can relate and impact other people so much more. So again, it's meeting yourself in the middle and saying, hey, like, this is how I'm feeling right now. This is, me being real with myself, but, like, how can I look at the bigger picture? How can I, use this to help other people? Or how can I use this to come back even stronger, even, better? Um, I think it's just, and we hear of some of these, like look at Simone Biles, right? Or we hear of some of these athletes going through slumps or whatever, sport they're playing, and they come back stronger. I think that it's not even just whether it's more of like, Simone was honest and real about it being like more of a mental thing. But whether it's a physical injury or not, there's such a huge mental component that comes with it. So I think like when we're able again to be real with ourselves, but then look at a different perspective, we can come back even stronger.
100%. But I think even too that this myth, and I know we wanted to talk about some of these myths today, and I'm watching the clock. I want you to get into marathon mindset. So we'll come back to that. But this myth that once I reach a certain level, I'll be confident, right? Or like once I
Oh,
reach a certain level, I won't struggle with that anymore because my performance will be amazing. I will have made it. And so a big goal for a lot of my girls is get recruited, play D1, play D2, play D3, like get to where I want to go. And then ta-da, it's all sunshines and rainbows. And then they get to their freshman year and they are rocked, right? And so the more that I can have people like Jordy Ball, you know, even before she tore her ACL, she was really vulnerable. And we have this podcast as well where she talks about her time at Oklahoma. Here they are winning natty champs, and they're the best in the team. And she's she's the ace pitcher in the entire country. And for her to be vulnerable and say, look, I struggled, like not just mental performance struggled, but mental health struggled. And Simone Biles saying, look, I'm one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. And I have a mental block right now. If I go up in the air, I'm so disoriented. I don't know if I'm going to land on my feet. She's arguably the best in the world. And so the more that we can have these people who are on those high pedestals say, me too, I struggle with this, right? I think it's so eye-opening for our youth. And you and I have said this, right? Like the more that we can broadcast, it can be both. You can have, your own doubts. Everybody has negative voices. Everybody has perfectionism. Everybody has comparison. We actually can't get rid of that. That's a myth, right? Like you never hire a mental performance coach to get rid of those things. Our job is to help you move through those things. And even after your time with us is done, what we're doing is we're equipping you to move through those without needing us, right? So
yeah.
it's this idea of, again, like life skills, performance skills, marathon mindset. I know we wanted to come back to that. So what does marathon mindset mean to you? Like, what is that? Let's just dive into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to highlight real quick some of the things you said because I think they're so important. But just like what you said, and there's no direct correlation between confidence and performance, right? Like sometimes we might be, or you look at some people when they have so much success, sometimes like they actually become less confident because they start to compare themselves more or to their previous performances, right? So the goal to mental skills is self-awareness, right? So like you said, it's not getting rid of things. So I just thought that was so good what you said, so I just want to highlight on that. Marathon mindset to me, man, running was always the thing that cleared my head when I heard God the loudest. Like it's, for most people they hate running, but for me it's so therapeutic. Like it is just, I feel my best self, most beautiful self when I'm running. I think Shailene Flanagan, I love her, and I think she kind of said something similar too, and I feel that 100%. But I think marathon mindset, I actually was walking through one of the teams that I work with at a university. I'm walking through, and I have no idea what coach who wrote it, whatever, on a whiteboard. I saw marathon mindset. I'm like, wow, like other people like talk about this too, like cool. And I was like, wow, like I need to embrace this more, right? So I feel like a big part of my brand is becoming marathon mindset, right? Because again, it's when I look at marathons now that I've done 5, right? And every single time the last like mile 25, it's like my best time, my worst time, it's like, oh my gosh, like I just want to be done, right? And it's that balance of, it's knowing, okay, I could quit. I always think to myself, all right, Carly, you could stop and you could quit, like that's, you can do that. But like, would you, for yourself, would you want to look back and do that? If there's a legitimate or injury or something like that, like highly recommend, like don't, but for me, it's been no, like I want to keep going. But all 5 times, no matter how much I love this, no matter how much it like pumps me up, that last mile or mile point two is always the hardest, in my opinion.
Wow.
Um, and you've come this far and you're almost there. But how many of us, Amanda, right? I'm going to get real deep right now. How many of us come this far in life or in sport or in our career, and then they say, oh, I'm not good enough, and they quit? Or, man, like I'm never going to make it to the next level, and they quit, right? So I think like there's so many ways that I can incorporate marathon mindset in like our mental game, in life, in analogies. But I think the biggest thing is that I love marathons so much because only, like less than 1% of the population has done one. And two, they're so hard. And like each marathon, I take away something new with me, something new that I learned about myself, and I'm able to apply it. And I feel like when I'm running a marathon, it's the biggest way to practice what I preach for me. So I think we all, like, if you've never run a marathon in your lifetime and you won't run a marathon in your lifetime, that is 100% okay. It's not everybody's thing, but it's finding whatever it is in your life that is going to challenge you, that is going to encourage you to practice what you preach the most, right? So I just think that there's so much that, it's a step-by-step process. You can't sprint a marathon. Um, like it's just not possible unless you're from Kenya, because some of these people are just unreal. But so I think just incorporating that in all aspects of life with my practice, when I'm not where I want to be, or I start to compare myself, or perfectionism creeps in, it's having that marathon mindset. Okay, we're playing this for the long game, right? Like we're playing this for the long game. Like we need to look at the marathon. When I start to um like even just with my injury and wanting to be back, I've just really each week I've been trying to be patient and not even think about like coming back yet, but just really being like where I'm at and looking at it for the marathon. Like I want to do this long term. So there's so many ways that I feel like I relate to this so much, but just even more with teams and clients, it's like I did a video the other week on in Myrtle Beach earlier in March when both my quads cramped halfway. So if you're not familiar, a full marathon is 26.2, but a half is 13.1. So halfway, and both my quads just cramped, like just completely cramped. And I was like, all right, I can push through this. Like I'm not injured. It was super humid. I probably needed more salt. And I was like, I can do this, but it's not going to be at the time that I would like it to be. And sure enough, I kept pushing through, and I finished it. And for me, I earned a mental PR that day for myself because I chose not to give up. I took it, mile by mile. And I think that's what we have to do in life. Sometimes we're looking 50 years down the road, which is important to do and prepare, or if you're looking at retirement. But I think that we have to remember that we're playing for the long game. Life is, we pray and hope, a long game, right? So I think the more that we can take each day mile by mile and 1 mile at a time and be in the mile that we're at, I think it can make a huge difference.
Totally. And now that you've done this enough times, hey, mile 25, I'm going to have to pull out my self-talk. I'm going to have to pull out my mindfulness. I'm going to have to pull out my playlist. I'm going to switch my playlist. Like you have all of those things now because you've had that experience. And so many beautiful, poignant allegories. to life, to sports, mile by mile, like so many takeaways. So I thought it would be fun to share. There's also some funny stories. Can you talk to us about mile 6? What happens at mile 6?
Mile 6. So, are you talking about the one that we were talking about
Yes.
earlier on? So well, during my last one. So for those of you that wonder, are like having to go to the bathroom, is that really a thing? Oh yeah, we call it runner's trot. So, during my last race, I I didn't have to go to the bathroom before it started, right? And I was like, oh, like I'll be good. Get there. The line is so long. Guess what? Have to go to the bathroom. Well, we're about to start. So so at mile 6, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna like, stop early on and, like go so then like I feel better because years before I didn't have such a good experience and I had to stop and walk because I like the porta potty felt so near, but it was so far and like having to stop and walk. And that even is a mental game in itself, right? Like having to go to the bathroom or like just our basic needs as a human being, like that can, I feel like mess with you so much.
You're physical.
Um,
It's such a
yeah,
physical thing that like being prepared for those poopy moments
yeah,
or like what's my
yeah,
body doing or like different miles, but you know that now, right?
yeah,
Like this was your
yeah.
most recent one, right?
Uh, my most recent one, I prepared to stop. Yes, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Um, and my most recent one was just all the things around because I, came to find out like a month later I had a stress fracture in my femur and I definitely had that during because the day before I, was having quad issues and I totally thought it was muscular and came to find out from my MRI, that it wasn't muscular, but I think, it was just knowing that like you have a plan like beforehand, like always having a plan. And I think that the more you can plan ahead of time, right? Like having these things in your back pocket, it's kind of like coping imagery, right? Like I remember Michael Phelps always talked about before he would see himself from, um, he would see himself in the pool. Then he would see himself, from the sidelines. And like if something happened with his bathing suit or his goggles, seeing himself from all these different perspectives. And for some athletes, I've found that sometimes it like might mess with them, but for a lot of them, it actually does help to like relieve, performance anxiety. So that's kind of what I do too. I tend to kind of like think in my head beforehand, like, okay, if I have to go to the bathroom beforehand, because there have been races where I didn't have to stop. And then there have been races where I did. And so it's kind of just knowing ahead of time, like, just like with some games, you're going to be on point. Things are going to go smoothly. In other games, they won't. It's a similar concept with runners and having to use the bathroom. So I think, yeah, I think if you can just like even too with my gels and, these like salt tablets that I take, um, I'm so crazy about when I take them, right? And just the timing of it. So I think just like with anything else, the more you can prepare ahead of time and honestly planning to fail, like things are just not gonna go like some of my best time for my third marathon, that was my best time and my worst training to date.
Mm.
So perfect example, right? Sometimes like things are gonna go great in practice and they might not always go well in like a game situation and vice versa. But I think it's not letting yourself have a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Not saying, oh, because this happened, X, Y, and Z is going to happen. It's just planning, preparing the best that you can. And then just like having a completely fresh mindset the day of for your thing. Just like, because last time you had to stop and go to the bathroom, you might not have to this next time.
Yeah. I think it's the reality of it, right? And I think one of the things that we do with our warriors, it is we just did it. It was for our grounding. Skill number 8 is grounding, which is staying grounded in the present moment. And one of the activities we do is triggers and shields. And so I have them really like list like what are your triggers, and I think sometimes we think, oh well, you have all your mental skills, you're going to be confident, and it's like sometimes the littlest things trigger us, like a bad umpire or what. The girls always giggle when I say this, but I hated when the other team's pitchers drag, softball people will know what I mean by this. On the pitcher's mound, when the other person's drag was different from my drag, there was this big hole on the pitcher's mound. And so something as simple as having a plan of my teammates knew between every inning when we met for our huddle, everyone was just going to shuffle dirt in. And that's what AB needed to be confident. And so it's like this marrying of physical preparation, mental preparation, having your shields, you know, like pulling up a shield of like, shink, like not today, not going to let this affect me mentally. You can have those shields, quote unquote, prepared of like my gel packs, my salt tabs, when I'm going to go to the bathroom. And I think there's beautiful differences between, you know, it's kind of superstitious. We can lean towards superstition, but if it doesn't go exactly according to plan, it's more of like, hey, I've prepared for this. It doesn't have to go exactly like this. Like you said, sometimes some of your races, you don't have to go to the bathroom. And other times it's like, I gotta go now. Right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's hilarious, but that's the reality of it.
Yeah. And if some runners are listening, you'll 100% like know, because it's just, and one of the guys that I connected with at the last race, I met these two guys, and, he's probably in his 40s or 50s. And then the other one's probably actually around the same age. And so I was running with them, and we got to talking about it, and I told them about my plan, and they were like, oh yeah. And it's like, that's just what runners, talk about. And I said how, some of them, like I cramped, some of them I felt great. I said, there's so much that you learn about your body and of course your mentality throughout, but he was like, it's a science. And that really resonated with me, because just like mental performance is a science, right? Like we're constantly trying different things. And you think about, some of the biggest, like the first car, right? Or the first, whoever invented toilet paper, whoever invented all these things that we now use, don't even think about, right? Like different people tried these things and it didn't happen overnight, right? It's again that marathon mindset, like continuing. It's the people that were brave enough to take risks and try different things and trial and error. So I think it relates to that too. But I love that triggers and shield. I love that.
I think I actually got that from a CBT workbook that I had purchased for mental health, but yeah, it's awesome. And it kind of stuck. The girls love it. So Carley, this has been amazing. And it just has felt like everyone's gotten an inside look of where our conversations go. And we've weaved and ducked and dodged through our conversation today. But I mean, we hit all the topics that you and I had talked about wanting to kind of hit today. But where can we follow you? We can tag are you most active on Instagram?
Yes, thank you for asking. So Facebook, Instagram, I feel like I've had like parents or, people reach out the most either on my Instagram page or Facebook page. I'm also on LinkedIn every now and then, someone reach out on their Twitter. Honestly, I don't really understand. These young girls are probably gonna be laughing at me, but I don't really understand Threads, but I have it and post on there because I'm like, if I can just put in the reps all across the board, I don't really scroll on it. And if you know me, I tend to be a post and ghost. I don't stay on social media. So if you do reach out to me and I don't get back to you in 5 minutes or something, like I'll get back to you. It's just, but yeah, I don't really know. Threads is the most recent thing, I guess, and it's still linked to Instagram. Yeah. But I'm on all of those, so feel free to reach out. Yeah.
And you and I have talked about this. We're going to be opening up one-on-one slots. So many of you guys have known that I am so busy. I have my one-on-one. We have not had openings, gosh, in probably 8 to 9 months. I have not opened up any slots for one-on-one. And so Carley is actually a mental performance coach with us. So if you have been wanting to get your son or your daughter, it doesn't matter what sport, if you've been wanting to get one-on-one coaching, Carley has some availability. And so we're going to be emailing out. I think the best way to do that would be to get on our wait list for that. So I can link that below as well. And then we'll go from there. So if we have too many people reach out, Carley's going to be really busy, but we'll start with that and see who responds. And if you've been wanting one-on-one coaching, Carley is amazing. And we wouldn't have her on staff if that wasn't the case. So
Thank you. Right back at you. You're amazing.
well, happy Friday at the time that we're recording this. It's going to be a great one when we air it. I don't know when exactly, but if you're listening to this and you liked this, we just always ask that, reach out to us if you have questions. And thanks for hanging out with us for the past however long we've been on, 45 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome. Always grateful for our combos.
Thanks, Carly.